After successfully winning over the gloomy male lead, I chose to immediately leave that world. Even when he begged me pitifully to stay, I didn't linger for a second. Later, in the real world, my life became incredibly difficult. The system approached me, offering £5 million in exchange for returning to the story and winning him over once more. Just as I was about to agree, bullet comments suddenly flashed before my eyes. Blimey, the ex-wife who abandoned the male lead is back. LOL, she doesn't think he still loves her, does she? The second girl not only succeeded in lowering his darkness level to -100, but also voluntarily stayed, giving him a complete family. The lovebirds are about to get married now. Can the ex-wife have some dignity and not disturb them? Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. It took me a while to process what was happening. The ex-wife they were talking about in the bullet comments was me. In my ear, the system was still rambling on, trying to sell me on this deal. All you need to do is make Ethan Sterling fall in love with you again, and you'll get £5 million. Even if you don't succeed, you'll still get £50,000 for your trouble. What do you think? Sounds good, right? It did sound good. And I could certainly use the money right now. But remembering the bullet comments, I hesitated and said I needed to think about it. So the system decided to send me back into the story first. More precisely, back to the home Ethan and I once shared. The small flat, just a few dozen square meters, was old but cozy, just as it had been 3 years ago. Ethan hadn't touched any of my things. Even the dress I had accidentally stained before I left had been washed at some point, and was hanging neatly in the wardrobe. I remembered it was a popular designer brand at the time. When Ethan secretly bought it for me, I scolded him harshly for spending so much. He didn't argue, just lowered his lashes obediently and waited for me to calm down. Then he gently coaxed me into trying it on. I looked down at the silky fabric in my hands. Taking a deep breath, I wondered, if Ethan had truly forgotten about me, why was he still keeping this flat? I looked up again, surveying the small room. My gaze was suddenly drawn to a white paper stuck to the window. On the translucent paper were a few hastily scrawled words. Flat for sale. Price negotiable. Urgent. The handwriting was sharp and unmistakably Ethan's. The tiny letters appeared before my eyes once again. Haha, the ex-wife must be stunned. The male lead wasn't holding on to their past at all. He simply hadn't had time to sell the flat yet. The ex-wife thought the male lead still loved her like before. Little did she know, with his new darling around, he wouldn't even spare her a glance. The reason the system wants her to win him back is just to create more obstacles for the male lead and his new love. The ex-wife is just setting herself up for humiliation. I pursed my lips. So that's how it was. The system dared to offer £5 million. Because it was certain I would never succeed in winning him back. Its true purpose was to make me the vicious female character obstructing the main couple's relationship. It had exploited my labor for a mere £50,000. £50,000. I laughed bitterly at myself. Playing the fool once for £50,000 wasn't too bad. It's about a week's worth of treatment in the ICU. I summoned the system and readily agreed to this deal. The system, beaming with joy, gave me a large sum of money to cover my expenses for this period, though it could only be used within the story world. Since Ethan was so eager to sell this flat, I might as well buy it myself. I picked up my phone and dialed the familiar number from memory. It took half a minute before someone answered. A girl's crisp voice came through the speaker. Who's this? She paused for a second. I lowered my eyes to confirm it was indeed Ethan's number. I was passing by and saw the for sale sign in the window. You want to buy the flat? The person on the other end exclaimed excitedly. That's brilliant. Finally, someone's interested in this place. I cautiously asked, are you the owner? I'm the owner's girlfriend. You can call me Cindy. So she was the second target. In that moment of distraction, there was a brief commotion on the other end of the line, like two people whispering. It seemed to take ages. Someone picked up the phone again. Ethan's cold voice came through clearly. Hello, Would it be convenient to meet in person to discuss? I waited anxiously in the cafe for what felt like ages. Finally, a discreet luxury car pulled up outside. As the door opened, a striking couple emerged. It had been 3 years, but Ethan's features were still as handsome as ever. The youthful innocence in his eyes had faded, replaced by the calm assurance that comes with power and wealth. He leaned lazily against the car door. Cindy must have said something amusing, as he smiled and ruffled her hair affectionately. From a distance, his gaze flicked briefly in my direction. It lingered for just a moment before drifting away, his expression unreadable. I was still lost in thought when Cindy sat down across from me. She gave me an apologetic smile. My boyfriend had some business to attend to, so he could only drop me off. I'm here on his behalf. I nodded sincerely. I can see you two are very happy together. Cindy's smile deepened. My boyfriend runs a tech company. Their annual profits alone are in the billions. We don't really need the money from this flat, we just want to be rid of it. There was a hint of pride in her voice. I nodded and, following procedure, asked to view the property. Cindy hesitated awkwardly. I don't have the keys. If you want to see it, my boyfriend would have to take you himself. I was slightly taken aback. Didn't he give you the keys before you came? Surely Ethan would have known a viewing was part of the sale process. Cindy sighed wearily. I asked for them, but he wouldn't give them to me. He's never taken me there either. She lowered her voice. To be honest, this flat is where he lived with his ex-wife when he was first starting out. It makes me uncomfortable, which is why I'm keen to sell it quickly. I made a non-committal sound. In that case, I don't need to see it. Let's just sign the contract. Cindy was visibly relieved. Afraid I might change my mind, she immediately produced the sale agreement. However, without the property deed, we couldn't complete the transfer right away. We'd still have to wait for Ethan to come. As we sat there with nothing to do, I found myself curious about this woman who, like me, had pursued Ethan. How did you two get together? I asked. What I really wanted to know was how she had managed to win Ethan over. The system had told me that after I left, Ethan had gone through a brief second phase of instability. He had attempted suicide, cutting his wrists, and his mental state had become so volatile it threatened the stability of the entire world. It was then that Cindy had entered his life. Not only had she reduced his instability, but she had also completely replaced me in his heart. Ethan was not an easy man to win over. She must have gone through a lot. But Cindy just smiled brightly and said, he had just been left by his ex-wife and was feeling hopeless. I comforted him, and before long, we were together. Could it really have been that simple? I could hardly believe it. Once again, I was overwhelmed by a flood of mocking bullet comments. Haha, looks like the ex-wife is gutted. Our female lead just has a way with the male lead that you can't resist. You know, it took the ex-wife a whole decade to win the guy over. She threw herself at him countless times before he reluctantly agreed to be with her. Our girl just had a few chats with him, and all the ex-wife's years of effort went down the drain. That's the power of true love, folks. I silently read these taunting remarks. They weren't wrong. My journey to win Ethan's heart had indeed been incredibly difficult. So difficult that I never want to go through it again. Ethan's parents didn't love him. At a young age, they abandoned him in a psychiatric hospital, leaving him at the mercy of abusive staff. The patients there were all lunatics and violent individuals. The entire facility was like a prison, heavily guarded. So even with the help of a system, I nearly lost my life trying to rescue him from the psychiatric hospital. I brought Ethan to a new city, far from his past. I enrolled him in school, encouraging him to pursue a proper education. Every week, I arranged expensive therapy sessions for him. I did all this hoping he would eventually trust me completely. But Ethan was far too clever. He effortlessly saw through the truth of this world, including my identity and motives. After completing his A-levels, Ethan became the top student in the county. I happily celebrated his achievement. But he coolly pulled me close, his expression icy with a hint of self-mockery. You did all this because you wanted to win me over, didn't you? After the initial shock, I sighed and choked out. I like you. That's my only motive. Ethan scoffed, clearly unconvinced. Nervously, I rested my head on his chest and mumbled, Ethan, stop overthinking. These past few years have been exhausting. You'd better start making my life easier soon. I really do like you. Please stop questioning me like this. It truly hurts. After university, Ethan started his own business. We moved into a tiny, run-down flat. There was no central heating in winter. I'm sensitive to cold, and my feet were always painfully frozen. Every night, Ethan would massage my feet, wordless but with eyes red from concern. By then, we were married. His life goal shifted from creating a tech company to destroy the world, to the mundane pursuit of earning money to buy a house for his wife. We hustled during the day and cuddled on our small bed at night. When I was pressured by a potential investor, I didn't dare tell Ethan. I just walked the streets alone, crying. Even when faced with deliberate sabotage from competitors, I stood firmly in front of Ethan, protecting him while I ended up in surgery. I don't know how many such incidents I endured before Ethan slowly fell in love with me. But compared to my decade-long effort to win him over, Cindy Howard needed only 3 short weeks to reduce Ethan's darkness to -100 and raise his affection to 100%. Cindy was still telling me about the sweet details of her relationship with Ethan. She said Ethan fell in love with her at first sight. I suppressed a slight heartache and took a sip of my milkshake. Has he mentioned his ex-wife to you? I asked. Cindy thought for a moment, then smiled smugly. No, he hasn't. He must have moved on from her long ago. I nodded. It's better that way. I didn't really want to ruin their relationship either. When Ethan appears later, I'll pretend to be regretful and desperately cling to him. Given his temperament, he should avoid me like the plague, right? After he rejects me, I'll take the £50,000 and happily leave this world behind. As I was planning this, Cindy suddenly received a phone call. She excitedly told me, my boyfriend's finished his meeting and is coming to pick me up now. We're going on a date, so let's talk about the flat tomorrow. I was stunned for a second, then forced a smile and nodded, I'll get going then. Cindy affectionately grabbed my arm. Where do you live? I'll ask my boyfriend to drop you off. The smile froze on my face. Cindy was too enthusiastic. By the time I realized what was happening, the car door had already closed. A cool, pine-scented fragrance wafted lazily through the air. Beside me, I could hear Cindy's coquettish voice as she laughed and showed Ethan her newly done nails. Ethan sat in front of me, and from my angle, I could see his slender, well-defined fingers on the steering wheel. He focused intently on the road ahead, yet responded to her every word. Looking at the man's handsome features in the rearview mirror, I felt a moment of disorientation. Ethan was never this patient with me. When we were together, he was always anxious and insecure. He knew about my mission and feared I might leave at any moment. Every night, he would suddenly wake up in a panic, frantically reaching for my side of the bed. I could only tiredly reassure him time and time again. I won't leave you alone. I love you, and it has nothing to do with the mission. I kept telling this lie until I left the world. Ethan held my hand tightly, tears streaming down his face, begging me not to go, pleading for me to stay a little longer, to spend a few more years with him. I sighed and refused it all. His face turned pale, his eyes filled with pain and madness. Why? Don't you love me? How can you bear to leave me? Didn't you say you'd never leave me alone? I smiled bitterly. I have someone I love in the real world. Sensing my gaze, Ethan frowned and lifted his eyelids. Our eyes met. The car suddenly lurched forward with a sharp brake. Caught off guard, my forehead slammed against the window with a dull thud, leaving a bruise. Sorry, Ethan's voice sounded somewhat hoarse. He turned his head slightly. We've arrived at your place. I finally snapped back to reality, mumbled an "oh," and said, thank you. When we got in the car earlier, Cindy had asked for my address, and I had randomly named an estate. I arranged to meet Cindy another time, then got out of the car. Ethan kept his eyes lowered, never once looking back at me. He didn't linger for a moment. The taillights of his car quickly disappeared from view. At the bustling entrance of the estate, I slowly crouched down, hugging my arms. I don't know how much time passed. The familiar luxury car stopped silently and forcefully in front of me. The window rolled down slowly, revealing the man's sharp profile. Ethan calmly gazed at me and said, "Get in." I thought Ethan would find an opportunity to see me. But I didn't expect it to be so soon. So soon that I hadn't had time to prepare myself to face him. In the midst of the standoff, Ethan raised his hand and lit a cigarette. I frowned suddenly. I didn't like Ethan smoking. If it were before, I would have snatched it away and stomped it out without a word. Back then, Ethan was also very obedient. When I said quit smoking, he never touched another cigarette. He certainly wouldn't be like now, shamelessly examining me through the pale white smoke. I held back for a moment, just about to speak. The bullet comments flooded the screen once again. What's the ex-wife being so reserved for? She doesn't think the male lead still has any intentions towards her, does she? The male lead knew she was back long ago. He just didn't point out her identity in the car because he was afraid of upsetting his female lead. If it weren't for warning her not to say anything rash in front of his love, the male lead wouldn't even bother to see her alone. I stood silently in place, as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. That momentary impulse from earlier vanished without a trace. Now, I had no right to manage his affairs. The cold white hand resting on the car window lazily dropped down. Ethan withdrew his gaze, his face expressionless. Lost in thought, he extinguished the cigarette with a hint of mockery. "Weren't you looking to buy a house? Get in, I'll take you to view some properties." The journey was silent. Ethan showed no intention of speaking. Yet, in front of my eyes, a cacophony of voices erupted. At least the ex-wife is sensible, knowing the front seat is for the girlfriend. She voluntarily sat in the back. Wasn't the male lead supposed to warn his ex-wife? Why is he taking her to their old house? Don't worry about that. The male lead doesn't know about the ex-wife's schemes yet. Once her true face is revealed, he'll despise her even more. As we reached the front door, I couldn't help but speak up. "Don't you have anything you want to ask me?" Ethan's hand, holding the key, paused. He lowered his head, raising an eyebrow, silently waiting for me to continue. I mustered my courage. Like why I've come back, how long I'm staying, and what's the purpose of buying this house? "Not interested," Ethan said, averting his gaze, his tone indifferent. "I don't care who bought this house. I'll erase everything that has to do with you. As for why you've come back..." He put his hands in his pockets, seemingly letting out a mocking chuckle. "Surely you're not trying to win me over again?" I paused for a second. What if I am? "You're welcome to try," Ethan said as he pushed open the door. With a creak, everything inside the room became clear to me once again. A slanted beam of light filtered through, dust particles dancing in its path. Ethan stood slightly behind me to my left, his coat brushing against my sleeve. Neither of us spoke. In the silence, it felt like we'd traveled back to an ordinary afternoon after our wedding. We'd just returned from the local market. His 10 fingers were laden with plastic bags full of my favorite foods and snacks. We'd laughed and joked all the way home. As soon as the door closed, I'd jump onto him, wrapping my arms around his neck, giggling as I sought his lips. Ethan would lean back helplessly until his spine pressed against the door. Then he'd hold my waist and return the kiss tenderly. Suddenly, I felt a grip on my wrist. My body tensed. Ethan quickly let go, his expression returning to normal. "Have a look around. It's fine if you want to buy it. Saves me the trouble of clearing out the place." I nodded, casually turning in a circle before facing him again. "No problem. I've already arranged with Cindy to transfer the ownership tomorrow. Just give her the property deed, and you won't need to be there." "All right," Ethan agreed promptly. After a pause, he continued in a mocking tone. "You needn't be so wary of me. If possible, I'd prefer never to see you again in this lifetime. The reason I'm meeting you alone is because I'm worried you might say something inappropriate in front of Cindy." He raised an eyebrow at me. "I don't want to upset her. Do you understand?" I took a deep breath. I won't mention our relationship in front of Cindy. Good. Silence fell again. At this point, I knew I should leave gracefully. But for the sake of that 50,000 pounds, I spoke up, my voice slightly choked. Ethan, I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have abandoned you and left. A flicker of emotion passed through Ethan's dark eyes. He narrowed his gaze at me, seemingly lost in thought. Go on. I came back to make amends. I've realized I still have feelings for you. Could you consider giving me another chance? I looked at him nervously, awaiting his response. The room fell into a deathly silence. After I spoke those words, I was almost overwhelmed by a tidal wave of mockery. I closed my eyes in embarrassment, feeling the heat of shame burning my cheeks. After what seemed like an eternity, someone in the room chuckled softly. What's this? Your comatose husband in the real world has died. So you've remembered your eternal backup plan? I jerked my head up, my eye twitching momentarily. My lips quivered with anger. All of this was captured in Ethan's dark eyes. He raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, didn't you notice? I have my own love now. His tone was casual, but those pitch-black pupils were fixed intently on me. My eyes felt dry. I blinked hard. I know. Ethan seemed to smile, or perhaps he showed no emotion at all. In the end, all he left me with was the sight of his back as he walked out the door. Brilliant. God knows how long I've been waiting for this moment. Ha ha. The boomerang finally hit the ex-wife square in the face. Ex-wife should just leave the system already. Even if she saves the male lead 100 more times, he'll never fall in love with her again. But the male lead still has a soft spot for her. He left her the house key, so she won't end up on the streets. Wait, what's that under the key? I froze, looking towards the table covered with a transparent cloth. Indeed, Ethan had left the room key before he left. Under the pale yellow key lay a red booklet. Bloody hell! Am I seeing things? Is that the property deed? Why did the male lead leave the property deed for the ex-wife? Shouldn't something this important go to his new girlfriend? With trembling hands, I opened the property deed. Suddenly, everything went quiet. On the deed, there was only one name written: mine. Suddenly, I remembered. When we bought this house, it was Ethan who handled all the paperwork. I knew I would leave someday, so to avoid complications, I had specifically instructed him to put only his name on the deed. Little did I know, he only listened to half of what I said. He did indeed put only one name on the deed, but that name was mine. So this house has always been mine. I didn't need to buy it again. The bullet comments section lit up once more. I get it now. The male lead must have come up with this plan to prevent his ex-wife from meeting Cindy again. Makes sense. The male lead is now a self-made billionaire. What's a few £100,000 flat to him? That's probably just the cost of one of Cindy's necklaces. Oh, I'm swooning. The male lead's love for Cindy is so pure. They've been together for over a year, and he still won't even hold her hand. I laughed bitterly to myself. So that's how it is. I called out to the system. The mission has failed. Can you send me back to my original world now? The system slowly typed out a question mark. You're being too hasty, aren't you? Did you think just confessing your feelings would make the male lead fall in love with you again? Where's that persistence you once had when pursuing him? I sighed. I've done my best. So what would you consider not being hasty? The system was silent for a moment, then said, kiss the male lead. What? I was shocked. If he pushes you away, we'll consider your mission a failure. You can exit this world and receive £50,000. If he doesn't push you away. The system paused. Then you'll have to stay in this world until you successfully win him over again. Has the damn system gone mad? The ex-wife actually agreed? She's such a slag. No, no, no. I don't want the main character to fight with Cindy. I remained silent. In stories, someone always has to play the villain. If not me, it would be someone else. I bargained, since you've made your request, I want more. £100,000, not a penny less. For the system, this amount was mere pocket change. It agreed but seemed puzzled. Are you really that desperate for money? Of course. The system continued. Is it worth sacrificing the rest of your life for someone who will never wake up? A pale face flashed before my eyes. I said, you wouldn't understand. The next day, Cindy invited me to lunch to thank me for solving her biggest worry. I think he still cares about her, even if he doesn't say it, Cindy whispered to me. Over the years, many people have asked about this flat, but he didn't want to sell it. That's why it's dragged on until now. I paused, then shook my head. You're overthinking it. If he really didn't want to sell, why would he put up an advert? Cindy gave me a meaningful look, leaning in mysteriously. She sighed, to be honest with you, actually. Before she could finish, the glass beside our table suddenly shattered. A deafening roar followed. As glass shards flew everywhere, I quickly pulled Cindy behind me. A middle-aged man had crashed into the restaurant with a massive digger. Bloody hell! The villain's here. The heroic rescue is coming. Who will the male lead save first? It's so hard to guess. Can the villain just kill the ex-wife first? Her act is so annoying. In the bumpy boot of the car. Cindy was terrified, her eyes red like a little white rabbit. A year ago, when she met Ethan, he had already built a vast business empire. On the surface, he was merely a tech tycoon. But in this fictional world where law meant little, he was all-powerful. Under his protection, Cindy had barely experienced any turbulence. I was different. During the years I pursued Ethan, he wasn't as powerful as he is today, and it was difficult for him to protect me constantly. In the business world, there were open attacks and hidden arrows. Being kidnapped was something I had gotten used to. I struggled to turn my body, gently touching her forehead, signaling her to calm down. Meanwhile, the villain had parked the vehicle in a wasteland. He grabbed an iron bar from the passenger seat and coldly walked towards us. Blimey, he's going to hit someone with that thick bar? This looks terrifying. It would hurt like hell. Don't torture our Cindy. It won't end badly, right? If Cindy dies, the male lead will probably go mad again. Indeed, when the ex-wife left, the main character almost self-destructed. If something happens to Cindy. Seeing Cindy curled up in fear, I closed my eyes for a moment. Cindy had saved Ethan. She had rescued him, giving him the motivation to live well. If she died too. The moment the bar swung toward Cindy, I moved in front of her. The piercing siren cut through the howling wind. The rod froze midair, a hair's breadth from my face. My eyes widened in shock, 1,000 questions racing through my mind. I remained frozen in place, as if the next moment might bring a bullet to my head, and struggled to look towards the commotion. Several police cars had surrounded the wasteland. The car door flung open, and Ethan practically leapt out, his eyes immediately searching for me. In my peripheral vision, I saw his expression blank for a moment. His eyelashes fluttering, yet his face remained impassive. But in an instant, his eyes turned red. The villain made a split-second decision between me and Cindy. He grabbed Cindy, pressing a sharp paper cutter against her carotid artery. Amidst her screams, he dragged her backwards, moving further away from me and even further from the police. The officers quickly surrounded them, facing off with the villain. It seemed I was safe. Still in shock, I tried to stand up. The next second, someone rushed over and embraced me tightly. Ethan was trembling. He held me tightly in his arms, squeezing so hard I could barely breathe. I felt the wetness slowly spreading across my neck. I wanted to laugh, but couldn't. Instead, I stroked his back gently, just as I had done countless times before. It's all right, see? I'm fine. I told you I'd be okay. Why didn't you believe me? The man in my arms remained silent. His wildly beating heart finally calmed under my soothing touch. Hang on, doesn't the male lead hate his ex-wife? Why is his first reaction to hug her? Hate my arse. Involuntary reactions don't lie. It's obvious he's madly in love with her. But what about our dear Cindy? She's still in the villain's clutches. My heart sank. I pulled away from his embrace. Let go, Everyone's watching. Cindy is still with the bad guys, we need to rescue her first. Even at a time like this, you're thinking of someone else? Ethan cut me off abruptly, his cold voice trembling with barely controlled emotion. Why did you take that hit for her? If I had been a moment later, I wouldn't have died, I said softly. Even if I had died here, I'd just returned to reality. But Cindy was different. Once a host decides to stay in the story world, their physical body in the real world automatically dies. And they can only live out the rest of their life within the story. If Cindy died in the story world, it would be equivalent to her truly dying. In every sense of the word. Ethan's expression gradually faded. It was as if even his breath had turned cold, leaving only a damp red mark at the corner of his eye. He lowered his head slightly, looking at his shaking hands, and laughed self-mockingly. How presumptuous of me. I was worried for nothing. I almost forgot you don't belong here. That's right, you have your precious husband waiting for you in the real world. You can't wait to leave this place and go back to him. I called for the system. But there was no response. My mind was in chaos. Just as my head was about to split from the pain, Cindy's voice suddenly rang out in my mind. System! System! Come out now! She was almost shouting. Didn't you say Ethan had eliminated all the villains? What's going on? I silently sighed. In the midst of the chaos earlier, I had locked eyes with the villain and recognized his identity. He was the male nurse from the psychiatric hospital years ago, who had used his physical size and position to bully Ethan when he was just a child. On the night Ethan escaped from the psychiatric hospital, he had smashed the man's legs with a smile on his face. If it weren't for the fact that he saw how deathly pale my face was, I suspect the villain's skull would have been the next thing to shatter. So many years had passed, and Ethan Sterling had encountered countless major villains, all worthy adversaries in intelligence and status, to the point where he had completely forgotten that in the corner there was still this evil little shrimp existing. This is a fringe villain, who poses no threat to the male lead's career. So he wasn't included in the list, an unfamiliar system voice sounded, devoid of emotion. He kidnapped you simply to kill you out of spite. After all, everyone now thinks you're the male lead's true love. Cindy's voice trembled with panic. I don't want to die. Please, please save me. The system remained unmoved. When you signed the agreement to stay, I had already informed you of the risks. And our relationship has been terminated. I can no longer provide you with any assistance. Besides, didn't you repeatedly claim that you had fallen in love with the male lead, and would rather die than leave him? Now your wish is being fulfilled. If you die, the male lead might remember you for the rest of his life. I don't know if it was my imagination. The system's voice seemed to carry a hint of mockery. Cindy broke down in tears. Who fell in love with him? We're not even a real couple. He only pretends to love me in front of others, but in private, he's cold as ice. Being with him is like living as a widow. If it weren't for wanting to live a good life by relying on the male lead, why would I have been willing to stay? If I had known earlier that he would get me killed, I wouldn't have tried to redeem him at all. Let whoever wants to go, go. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. The reactions in the bullet comments were even more intense than mine. I'm numb, thought it was pure love, turns out it's just a gold digger. Shipped this couple so hard, turns out she's even worse than the ex-wife. At least she stood by the male lead through thick and thin. Got it, the second female lead came to the male lead's side. And did nothing but enjoy the benefits. Am I the only one who feels sorry for the male lead? Everyone's just using him. The male lead is truly pitiful, always giving his heart, only to be betrayed time and time again. Wait, who said the male lead fell in love with the second female lead? Is it possible they've been using each other all along? I suddenly looked towards Ethan. He stood quietly with his arms folded outside the crowd, his expression showing no trace of the earlier panic, calmly observing from the sidelines. Host, did you just call me? The familiar voice of my personal system sounded in my mind. I'm sorry, there was an internal equipment malfunction earlier, which might have caused a frequency error. Did you hear any other systems or hosts talking? I shook my head and asked a question that had been bothering me for a long time. Can the darkness value and the affection value be faked? Theoretically, it's not possible, the system said, but theories are all nonsense. If the male lead dares to rebel against even us, is there anything he can't do? I was stunned. Rebel? The system informed me. After I left, Ethan underwent a second dark transformation. The high level of darkness would cause severe physical repercussions. A fate worse than death, the pain piercing to the very core. For this reason, the system had applied to the higher-ups to delete Ethan's memories of me, restoring him to his initial settings as if I had never existed. But Ethan was too clever. Too clever to be manipulated by them. As soon as the memory deletion process began, he smiled and calmly shattered his own leg. Starting with his ankle, then his knee, and finally his wrist. While enduring the pain of the backlash, he methodically pitted himself against the system. Memories could be erased, but restoring the body came at a great cost. The system had no choice but to urgently halt the memory deletion program. In the end, they came up with a last resort plan. They dispatched Cindy Howard, an exceptional conqueror who had already redeemed countless villains, to see if a different person could redeem him. Cindy was finally rescued. By that time, she had already fainted from the shock of seeing the villain shot in the head by a sniper. Amidst the chaotic crowd, I sat in a corner wrapped in a blanket, fidgeting with my fingers. The system had just notified me that the hospital was demanding payment again. The money in my account would only cover 3 more days. Over the past few years, to pay for the exorbitant hospital bills, I had given up my beloved career, sold my house and car, and spent all my savings. I had even taken on a massive debt. I worked mechanically, day and night to earn money, but still couldn't keep up with the hospital bills. The system advised me again, listen to me, stop wasting your efforts. No matter how much money you spend, he won't wake up. No matter how important he is to you, is he more important than yourself? I stubbornly shook my head. I don't want him to die. I can't accept it. My unusual behavior caught the attention of someone nearby. A policewoman bent down to look at me with concern. Why are you crying so much? Are you shocked? Do you want me to accompany you to see a therapist? You can go attend to your duties. I'll stay with her. Ethan had walked over at some point. He looked down at me, his eyes swirling with emotions I couldn't understand. The policewoman hesitated. You are. I'm her husband. Ethan showed their marriage certificate. Blimey, we've been calling her ex-wife for so many episodes, turns out she's the actual wife. So the male lead's been acting all brooding and vengeful. But he couldn't even bring himself to throw away the marriage certificate? What do we do? We were just cursing them, but now it's starting to look quite shippy. I covered my eyes, feeling irritated and distressed. Ethan asked coldly, Connie, who are you crying for? I didn't respond. Fine, don't say it, he snorted lightly. Actually, I don't want to know. After a few seconds, he questioned me again. Do you love him that much? I looked at him with teary eyes and slowly nodded. He asked me again, then do you love me? I nodded again. Ethan fell silent for a few seconds, then laughed bitterly. He stood up and paced around expressionlessly, as if trying hard to calm his emotions. He punched a half-solidified concrete block, sending dust flying. The beautiful knuckles were now a bloody mess. He gritted his teeth and grabbed my shoulders. Connie, you're not even pretending anymore, are you? What are you thinking? Do you think I'll be as boundlessly tolerant as I was 3 years ago? 3 years ago was when Ethan loved me the most. His affection for me had reached a fever pitch, doubling what one might consider normal. Even after discovering my true intentions of pursuing him, he was undeterred. In a desperate attempt to keep me, he stripped away all pretenses and fell to his knees before me. Utterly lacking in dignity, even defeated, he begged. Connie, I love you. You can't do this. You can't make me fall in love with you and then abandon me. Connie, I'm not asking you to give him up for me. But you can't just discard me so decisively. Can't you have one more lover? One in story world and one in real life. I won't interfere with you too, as long as you're happy. You don't even have to see me often. I looked at him, torn between laughter and tears. He didn't know. This lover in real life was also him. Contrary to the setting in the book, in the real world, Ethan grew up in a happy and healthy family. He was gentle and calm, like a soft breeze carrying morning dew. He died on the way to our wedding. In the wedding car. Through the window adorned with festive decorations. I stared blankly as the oil tanker came crashing towards us. In the next moment, Ethan's face appeared in my vision. He shielded me with his body, his long eyelashes brushing against my skin as he gently covered my eyes. "Babe, just take a nap, you'll be all right," he said. As the flames raged, he winced in pain but still calmly patted my back. His voice was steady and clear. Just like 10 years ago, when he crouched down to look at me at the orphanage entrance, smiling warmly. "You look so sweet, what's your name?" Before I was 7, I was an unwanted child. My biological father was a rapist, and I was the fruit of his brutal act. Unwanted and unexpected, I was sent to an orphanage right after birth. The staff believed I had inherited the rapist's genes. No matter how well-behaved or hardworking I was, I couldn't earn their affection. Every couple who came to adopt would initially be drawn to me, kindly stroking my face. But I could only enjoy those fleeting moments of love. Once they learned about my background, their attitudes would change instantly, and they'd avoid me. Only Ethan was different. He convinced his parents to adopt me. From beginning to end, he firmly chose me, saying, "I trust my first instinct. She's so lovely, why shouldn't she be loved?" Ethan had been my brother for 6 years. He played the role of an older sibling perfectly, patiently teaching me right from wrong. At the same time, he spoiled me excessively. Within the boundaries of our sibling relationship, I had unlimited power over him. I could make him tie my shoelaces, roll around on his bed, and even knock on his door with my pillow on stormy nights. I could even get away with sneaking a kiss when he pretended to be asleep. We both knew what was hidden beneath the facade of our sibling relationship. At 18, the Sterling family went bankrupt. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling planned to flee with what money they had left. I, their emotionally distant adopted daughter, was clearly not part of their plans. But Ethan stayed behind for me. He patted my head, feigning nonchalance. "It's all right, Connie. I'll never abandon you." I loved to paint and had won many awards since childhood. But studying art was an expensive path. To allow me to focus on painting without worry, Ethan dropped out of university and started working at a construction site, desperately trying to earn money. He transformed from a spirited young man into an adult burdened with heavy responsibilities. Ethan was exhausted every day. He would wake up before dawn, sit by my bed for a moment, then rush off to work, only returning late at night. Sometimes, when he came home weary, he'd find me having a nightmare. Without even changing his clothes, he would soothe me until dawn. I suggested quitting school to work and help share the burden of our living expenses. That was the first time Ethan lost his temper with me. He sternly told me to reconsider giving up on myself. As he turned away silently, I hugged him, crying. He froze for a moment. The next second, I cupped his face and stood on tiptoe to kiss him. Ethan stumbled back a few steps from my sudden embrace. However, he steadied himself and returned this impulsive and forbidden kiss with a muffled response. "I love you," he sighed softly. "That's why supporting you is my mission. Seeing you happy makes me happy." Years later, in a parallel universe, I found myself in a similar situation to his. "You just need to focus on preparing for your A-levels, okay? Why take on tutoring jobs? I don't need you to earn money for me." Looking at the downcast young man before me, I smiled and hugged him. "I love you, Ethan. That's why supporting you is my mission." My voice broke halfway through. "Seeing you happy makes me happy." It had been 3 months since Ethan was declared brain dead. I woke up from another nightmare, gasping for air. Ethan would never come back. In a frenzy, I searched for the sleeping pills he had hidden before his death, pouring them into my palm. A system intervened, stopping my reckless action. "Do you know why you survived the car crash? Because Ethan exchanged his soul with us to keep you alive." I froze, the bottle of pills slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. The system continued. His soul lost all memories and was placed as a character in a book. This character has a tragic backstory and needs redemption. But many players have failed. Would you like to try? I snapped back to reality. Calmly, I gazed at his beautiful face. Even in anger, he was breathtaking. Ethan looked down at me, enunciating each word. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I won't be manipulated by you anymore. I don't want you at all. Before he could finish, I suddenly hooked my arms around his neck and kissed him. Our lips touched for just a moment. Then I was forcefully pushed against the wall. Ethan gripped my shoulders tightly. His eyes red with humiliation, unable to utter a word. He looked as if he wanted to punch me, or even kill me. I pressed my lips together, about to speak. But in the next second, the tall figure silently lowered himself. He knelt before me, closed his eyes briefly, tilted his head back, and slowly moved towards my lips. It was a posture yearning for affection. My heart trembled. My vision blurred. Mate, we know you're stubborn, but couldn't you have held out a few seconds longer? Blimey, must be knackered after all that pretending. You've been planning this since you found out she was back, haven't you? Mr. Tough Guy, first pretending to be with that second pursuer. Now acting all cold in front of her, but one kiss, and you crumble. To be fair, I haven't seen a snog scene since the first pursuer left. So exciting. My mind went blank. Even my breath was carefully stolen by him. In my ear, the system screamed, "Host, what have you done?" The male lead's heart rate has skyrocketed to 999. As our lips and teeth intertwined, I gazed at Ethan, dazed. After a long moment, he moved back ever so slightly, his rapid breaths falling on my face. "Let's go home," he said. Ethan gave me a black credit card. I fiddled with it, sighed, and set it aside. He pressed his lips together and slipped it back into my hand. "I know you're not impressed by the money in the book," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "But you need money here too. At least while you're with me, please be a bit kinder to yourself, all right?" I nodded silently. Ethan was right. I had never been good to myself. Before returning to the story world, it had been a long time since I'd had a full night's sleep. To make money, I'd given up my paintbrushes. I worked 3 jobs a day, from 5 in the morning until past midnight. A 5-square-meter bedsit, without even a private bathroom. I was utterly exhausted. So when Ethan laid me down on the bed, I fell into a deep sleep. This sleep was particularly sweet. I had no awareness, not even bothering to dream. I ended up sleeping for a full day and night. When I woke, I found myself curled up in Ethan's arms. He was gently patting my back, his eyes half lowered, his smooth profile showing a rare peacefulness. I rubbed my eyes and shifted to hold him in a different position. "How's Cindy doing?" I asked. Ethan replied nonchalantly. "She asked me for some money and went off to travel the world." The system had just informed me. While I was sleeping, Cindy had been causing a fuss, demanding to see Ethan. She could no longer leave the system, and in this world, he was her last hope. I nodded, teasing with a smile. "Mr. Sterling, you're quite generous with your breakup fees." "It's not a breakup fee," Ethan said, looking at me seriously. "We never had any substantial relationship. From beginning to end, it was mutual exploitation, a cooperative arrangement." Cooperation? Her purpose for coming to this world was the same as yours, to redeem me. I adjusted my darkness level to let her complete her mission. And she stayed to act out a part with me. I paused for a second. "Ethan." He turned his face slightly to look at me, responding gently. "Was it your doing that brought me back into the story?" "Yes, it was," he admitted without hiding anything. "For the sake of keeping things interesting? The system wants my life to always have twists and turns. Once I start living a happy, peaceful life, it's bound to stir up trouble." I frowned. "Then how did you know the system would definitely choose me? Perhaps it would have sent a more professional conqueror than Cindy." "Not necessarily me." Ethan smiled slowly. "Because both the system and I knew deep down, only you could truly disrupt my emotions. I rested my head on Ethan's shoulder. I talked about many things from the past. The man in my arms listened quietly. Sometimes he would smile, other times he would lower his eyes in thought. After a while, he pulled me up from his body and asked me seriously, "What are you planning to do in the future? You have such a long life ahead of you. Connie, are you going to live in the shadows for the rest of your life?" His tone was gentle, with a hint of melancholy. I looked at him curiously. This didn't sound like something the Ethan from the book would say. After thinking for a moment, I said softly, "I owe him everything." Ethan's fingers paused, and he frowned at me. "Why do you say that?" Looking at that familiar gaze, my eyes welled up with tears. I had harmed Ethan in the real world. My feelings for Ethan were far from as pure as what he gave me. From our first meeting at the orphanage, I tried hard to catch his attention. When he bent down to touch my hair, I eagerly leaned in, my eyes bright. I watched as he smiled at others, saying, "Mom, look how well this little one and I get along." What fate! He was just my ladder to escape misery. I didn't believe I could be loved. Nor did I believe he would love a sister without blood ties unconditionally. So I deliberately sought his company. It was me, silently enticing him to cross the boundary between siblings with me. In the Sterling household, I used him to establish myself. Later, when Mr. and Mrs. Sterling passed away, I played the weaker party, letting him willingly support me. Even when I suggested going to work, it was my tactic of advancing by retreating. At this point, I broke down in tears. Ethan pressed my head into the crook of his neck, comforting me. There. What else? Then there was that impulsive kiss. It wasn't the result of emotions breaking through restraints. I was too greedy, wanting to embed myself deeper into his life. Ethan had originally planned to wait until I was a bit older before marrying me. But I was so insecure. Even a second without having him tied to me made me fear he would leave. So I used many tactics to force him to marry me immediately. If Ethan knew how I had calculated all this, he would probably regret dying to save me, wouldn't he? He wouldn't regret it, a calm voice pulled me from my thoughts. Ethan held me tighter and repeated, "It's all right." Even if he knew, he wouldn't blame you. Mission accomplished. The system transferred £5 million into my account. "Host, you can still choose whether to stay or not," the system coaxed. "If you stay, we can sign the contract right now. Don't you want to be by his side forever?" This is a great opportunity. The same options as 3 years ago. I was torn. After a long silence, the bullet comments reappeared. "Don't agree to it. If you stay, you'll die. And that $5 million will end up in the system's hands. The male lead is no longer under the system's control. They've already sent people to erase him. If you stay, you'll be finished along with him." Damn. If only we could eliminate the interest group behind the system. It's all these capitalists doing. Exactly. They're using the male lead's business acumen and research capabilities to boost GDP, secretly enjoying the benefits from within the book, and then planning to get rid of him. The system is so evil, boo-hoo. Connie, you should leave quickly and live your own life with the $5 million. I stared blankly at the bullet comments. My mind went blank. If Ethan died in the book, his soul would dissipate completely. The Ethan lying in the ICU would be no different from a dead person. I jumped out of bed in a panic, searching the entire room, but couldn't find any trace of Ethan. Suddenly, a loud explosion came from the city center. The towering skyscraper burst into flames, the entire building glowing like a red-hot iron rod. Oh no, the male lead is still inside. I can't believe the system acted so quickly. They must have used a bomb. What a grand gesture to kill the male lead. Connie, you need to leave this world quickly. Wait, why are you running outside? I ran barefoot onto the street. The fire was spreading rapidly. A searing wind whistled in my ears. In my memory, it was just like this all-encompassing inferno before the petrol tanker exploded. I stared blankly at the burning building. My lover was inside. Tears welled up instantly, only to evaporate on my cheeks. In the surging flames, I thought I could see Ethan's wavering silhouette. The fire was too intense, his figure, obscured by layers of heat waves, was becoming indistinct. Oh no, the main entrance has collapsed. We're too late. The male lead could have escaped, but he went back to save that child. Now he can't get out. He's on the ground floor. He could actually leave through the back door, but he doesn't know. Back door. I pushed through the crowd and rushed into the building. Found that back door, and stumbled around inside like a headless chicken. The live comments lit up, guiding me. Yes, turn left, the fire's not as bad there. He's at the end of the corridor, around the corner. Brilliant! My ship is about to sail. Just as the back door collapsed in flames, I grabbed hold of Ethan's shirt. Seeing me, his eyes darkened, a hint of anger flickering in them. His fist clenched at his side, then slowly relaxed. I threw myself into his arms. He held me steady and said coldly, "I always called babe, but you're not as well behaved as a baby at all, are you?" Babe. My mind went blank. I held tightly onto his waist, suddenly looking up at him, my arms beginning to tremble. Did he know? When did he find out? The image of Ethan gazing at me when I woke up that day suddenly flashed through my mind. It was Cindy. She told him. So Ethan had remembered everything back then. "Connie, haven't I taught you not to put yourself in danger?" Ethan scolded me with a stern face. "I've been dead for so many years, how can you still be so foolish? Don't you know how painful it is to be burned alive?" A wave of flames rolled down the corridor. He frowned, shielding me as we retreated into the room. The door slammed shut. Finally, there was a bit of breathable air. But I still buried my face in his chest. Ethan pulled me away, his expression impassive. "Let's talk. Why did you come in here?" He looked down at me. "To save me, or to die with me?" I bit my lip, clutching his hand tightly. Seeing my silence, Ethan's delicate brows furrowed slightly. After a moment, his attitude softened, and he spoke calmly. "Connie, I've never blamed you. You're not a burden to me, you're my treasure. If it weren't for you," he paused, shaking his head as if remembering something. "If I hadn't met someone to love, I wouldn't have been happy in this life. But I used you." I lowered my head, sniffling. "I don't deserve you treating me like this. Do you love me?" "What?" Ethan repeated, "After all these years, do you love me?" It was a rhetorical question. I said softly, "I love you, but..." "There are no buts, that's enough," he said. 7 parts true feelings mixed with 3 parts pretense. You've lacked love since childhood, to have come this far is already amazing. You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you. You don't need to feel guilty or suffer over my death. Just live your life." Tears burst forth in an instant. Feeling both sad and angry, I couldn't help but jump up and hit him. How can you say such heartless things? How could he ask me to give up on him? How could he be so cold? Ethan smiled, his clean face particularly vivid in the firelight. He took the opportunity to pull me into his arms, patting my back gently. "You're only 26, you have a lot of money, a university degree, and you're beautiful. I've raised you so well, can't you agree to this small request?" Ethan sighed softly, "I know you don't want to let me go, but I'm already dead. Accidents and tomorrow, no one knows which will come first. Babe, doesn't everyone have a few passers-by in their life?" He touched my face one last time. "Rest in peace. After you go back, bury me somewhere I can see you." I jolted awake, my body drenched in cold sweat. This was the first night I'd been able to sleep since returning to the real world. My phone pinged with a notification. It was a bank deposit alert. I stared at the screen, my eyes widening in surprise. £70 million. The system's voice came through, sounding deflated. "Dear, this money is Ethan's inheritance. In the book, it was 700 billion, but only this much could be transferred out." Clutching my phone, I felt something wasn't quite right. Even if it was just 70 million, it shouldn't have come to me. The system continued wearily. "Since I'm about to be unemployed anyway, I might as well tell you a bit more. Ethan's original plan was to keep you in the book. To ensure you and he wouldn't be disturbed by the system anymore. He spent these years seemingly expanding his business empire, but was actually secretly investigating the system. He even found my headquarters. He had already planted the explosives. Once they detonated at the right time, he would have been completely free. Unfortunately, our bomb was just a step ahead. He really did try his best to survive with you. It was so close. I sat silently in the sunlight. So close indeed. Ethan's self-deprecating eyes flashed in my mind again. He had said, accidents and tomorrow, no one knows which will come first. I personally removed Ethan's tubes. I buried him in front of our home. Every time I left the house, I would earnestly say goodbye to that small mound of earth. When I returned, I would crouch down and chatter about the day's events. Later, I felt the bare mound looked too empty. Ethan wouldn't have liked it. So I planted a loquat tree over him. I used the $70 million to open an art gallery, becoming a business owner. Later, I went to study art in France for 3 years. By the time I graduated, my paintings had gained some recognition in the art world. I not only painted but also taught, sending off batch after batch of vibrant students. During holidays, I traveled the world for inspiration. Wherever I went, I would paint Ethan's face. As I grew older, that loquat tree grew from a small sapling into a tall tree, its branches spreading out like a large hat. Ethan, you can rest easy now, I said, looking at the big tree that seemed to want to embrace me. My eyes reddened, but I still smiled and said, see? I'm living such a happy life.